on you. Sue will be here, Betty, that one's for you too.
Thank you.
Now, is it okay if I do this?
Sure.
Because I'm far enough away?
You're far enough away.
Yes. Wonderful. This might allow you to understand better, but then again, maybe not.
Generally, yes, we understand.
Okay, and that's my prop.
So, I'll start. I'm Mary Thomas with Community Resources Council. It's the budget hearing for CRC, the Shawnee County Advocacy Council on Aging, and Shawnee County Social Services. CRC appreciates the partnership and the confidence the county has in allowing us to continue to do this work for the county. And I could go razzle-dazzle, but I just went old school because there's a lot of numbers.
For Commissioner Mays' benefit, could you go over what CRC does for the county?
Absolutely. Thank you, Betty. You know, we're the best kept secret in town, which is sort of unfortunate, but we don't do direct service in social service to the public, so they often don't know us. 95 years our anniversary this year, but what we have always done from 1925 forward is mind the gap of social service in this community. As issues arise, clearly, like what we're in right now, we work with the partners within the community, whether it's municipal, government, business, not-for-profit, trying to bring the right people around the table, work through task force and committee work to create and solve. Often the first creation or solve doesn't work, but then it's continuing to work through that so that we refine and get it ready, or as different developments come together, then we work through trying to make sure that we've got it right. An example of this is one of the things we do is foster or have a incubation opportunity for new not-for-profits and new charitable organizations. It is hard to hit the ground running unless you're organized with a lot of money. And the gold standard is to be a 501c3. It's hard to beg a buck in this town if you don't have that IRS designation, because it's how even small shops or corporate foundations understand that you've met the test. It's not a fly-by-night, it's not take the money and run. So in order to really kind of get out of the garage with some of these philanthropic, passionate ideas, which we currently have a lot of, it's interesting, tough times bring a lot of philanthropy to the surface. And I have had a lot of calls from individuals who had this burning desire and have been working with a few folks over a few years, and now they're ready to kind of move to the next level. And they hear the only way to get funding is to be a 501c3. That designation from the IRS takes anywhere from 6 months to a year, anywhere from a $300 filing fee to a $1,200 filing fee. It's all based on what you're doing, what your numbers are. So to kind of short circuit that a little bit, they often will reach out to CRC. We work with them to get them organized, to get them legal within the state of Kansas, to create their documents and get them moving. They generally have a board, they just don't know it. We do a lot of training in that regard for free for any one of these organizations or the NIAs, 20 to 22 of them functioning at any point, and get them going. And so with that, in partnership with CRC, as they mine for new money, it runs through our escrow account. It's payable to us. They present expenses that we just pay back. It's not income earning, interest bearing, and that sort of thing. It's just straight money in, money out as needed. And through that process, we guide them all along the way in their growth, as they change, as they take off, or maybe they do the one-time solve and then they're done and they disband and then we close them out with the state. And we have done that for 95 years. Organizations that have come out of let's just say our conference table on a solution would be like the original Meals on Wheels, Family Service and Guidance Center, the First United Way, the original Christmas Bureau, and it goes up, Nodo Arts District. They still operate under our 501c3. Even though they are their own 501c3, they prefer we do the back office work, do their corporate governance, be their fiscal agent, and let their volunteer board, with their individual expertise, do the things they do best in growing that district. So we fill the gap where we're needed. Sometimes it's just getting them started, but sometimes, like 10 years later, we're still working the net for them. So that's just a piece of what we do, along with just working with community leaders. You will see in this first document here, which is, they're all dated May 15, we serve, primarily myself, on 17 different boards, committees, task force, and working groups, all working to solve a specific issue in social service or meeting a need of basic need in the community. So because we don't deliver services directly to the public, they often don't find us. Or, they're quick to give to Boys and Girls Club or those organizations that are right on the forefront that affect so many families. And that's fine. We do fundraise a little bit, but I have moved away from that work because what we do in supporting so many other entities that need to do fundraising, it felt almost competitive. So I have stepped back from that. We do contract work, management work, just like we do here for the county. We do a little bit for the city, and then we do it for specific organizations. We don't do a lot of grants running either because, again, I feel somewhat competitive with those startup groups and the long-term groups that we work with on a regular basis. There's only so much of the pie. So again, I took a step back from that. Doesn't mean we can't do it. We meet our budget needs. We're small. I have 2 full-time, a part-time, and myself. We are a small group, but we're pretty mighty. So with all that said, let me direct you to just kind of this single page that talks about funding from last year, because this is where the rubber hits the road for you, gentlemen. This is how your money got spent, if you will, last year. So what I had staff do was go through each one of these applications. So let me step aside. This is my demonstrative evidence, if you will. We create a notebook like this for every one of the individuals that are on our volunteer grant review committee. And I pull 2 of those committees together, 5 each time, one for the regular social service and the other for the senior programming social service. There's a very distinct reason for that, and it's based upon, I think it was in 1980 or 82, there was an issue passed by the voters, up to a mill set aside by the county for this kind of work and funding. And that's why we have a very distinct line on how this works. And as we manage both of those processes, I review all applications to make sure no crossing of the monies, that the programs are very distinct, because they can file with their senior programming, and they also may have non-senior programming or regular social service basic need programming. So we run it on 2 tracks, 2 separate times, so that the executive director, especially those that are almost sole proprietors, are not overrun, because it's a pretty extensive piece of work that they have to pull together every year. So with that notebook in mind, going through all of that, we've been able to pull through the applicants of last year that were successful in being awarded, how many programs they were asking for within their application, and then the number of unduplicated counts, which means they could have seen many of these over and over again. Just like Catholic Charities at 66, I know for a fact that really would be times 12, because their program was calling people every day sometimes when they didn't have family or healthcare coming in to make sure they're taking their meds, that they're up and going, whatever the issue is that they've learned about them, to make sure that their life is moving on, that they're, if they don't answer, then they send, a call out for a well check, and often they will find somebody who's down and needs assistance. So I'm not going to, run these through the complete list, but you can see in your totals how your money is spread out through the community in basic needs, in social service, and senior programming. To get to the heart of the matter, then I would turn your direction to these big spreadsheets that I've handed you. Let's look at the one for the Advocacy Council on Aging, and it says so across the top. This recommendation is what has come as a result of the work of the volunteer committee of about probably 25 hours, because as I create these notebooks for them, they pick them up and take them home a couple of weeks in advance. And they probably fall asleep over them a few times because it's pretty dry. But they do their best to get through it, and I marvel at the questions they come back with when we meet in person. And the particular committees I pulled together this year, through no forethought on my own, were very brutal with their pencil. They sharpened. They asked tough questions. And they really focused on the fact that this is basic needs grant opportunity. And they also kept in mind that we're not talking about 2020 money, that's ship sailed. They were thinking about 2021 money, knowing the difficulties that most government entities would be in for the lack of either sales tax dollars or whatever. The county's in pretty good shape, but that doesn't mean we don't have to be careful with our money. So you can see then the recommendation, working in the colored columns across, what the fund request was, what that change would have been from the previous year, because again, my directive was to anyone that was putting in an application, 0 uptick on your funding, flat funding. Some of them, decided to take a run on the palace to see if there was really a test on that, and unfortunately, they were hit pretty hard by the grant committee. So the yellow is what the committees recommended per each agency, and then the last column gives you an indication of change of funding from what was awarded in 20 to funding what would be awarded in 21 if you followed this recommendation. So at the end of the day, on this particular group, it was a -3 on the funding from last year. The committee was proud to actually come in under budget, if you will, in their request. That wasn't their driver, that's just how it ended up, but when they figured it out, they were pleased with that. And this group of folks were, they're business folks, they're executive directors, one was a county employee, often are consumers of the programs either through extended family or through their own exposure. So we had a fine mix of both gender and culture, age, and then throughout the community what their input was on a day-to-day basis. So let me direct your attention to a couple of things that might give you a little heartburn later, which is the first two items. Catholic Charities, there was a recommendation of 0 funding, but I can also tell you that that program closed in June, at the end of June of this year, due to specific COVID issues, and they have withdrawn the request for funding. And so since we recommended 0% funding, I left the spreadsheet alone. It sort of takes care of itself, if you will. The second item was, let's see.
Excuse me, I'm missing that. 0 funding
They're
for
at
Catholic
10.
Charities?
Yeah,
Mhm.
10,000 on here.
I'm showing 10,000.
Oh,
Community action was reduced from 35 to 15.
yeah, they were. You're right. So that 10,000,
Zero.
yeah, that 10,000 goes back to the bottom line because they did just email me and withdraw the request for funding for next year,
Okay.
letting me know that ultimately the diocese elected to close that program out throughout the Catholic Charities programming within the Northeast Kansas.
Will you send me an email just stating that?
Stating that for your record, you got it. Let's see, so, and then the other, Let's Help did not apply timely, even though there were extensions granted for almost everyone because we were hit COVID. Everybody was turned upside down during this time process, so I gave extensions up to 2 weeks. But they still didn't get there, and they understand that, so I don't expect for you to hear from them. Rossville Senior Center did apply timely, but the committee reviewing the budget, it became clear to them that what we were doing was underwriting a city building for their insurance and their utilities. They could find very little use of that building for seniors or by seniors. They found no evidence of their own opportunity to fundraise. I have personally gone out there and visited with them twice in the last 18 months. It's a fine building, and they have a full kitchen. And I tried to encourage them to do some use of that building for private functions and board meetings and rehearsal dinners or whatever, and make a few bucks. But for whatever reason, that's not their interest. And the committee was not interested in underwriting the payment of insurance and utilities for this building. So they were rejected completely. Beyond that, that would be the only, what I would call, heartburn factor for you from a constituent if the recommendation goes forward. So if I move to the other, while keeping in mind Rossville Senior Center, because we run the Advocacy Council on Aging first, and then close that out and allow those that also have non-senior programming to file a second application specific to those programs, because the city's running their program at the same time, the United Way is running their foundation grant money at the same time, so I tried to not overrun these folks. To preserve Rossville's opportunity, I refiled their application under straight social services. Just because they're a senior program, it doesn't preclude them to file that way, as opposed to round A, if you will. Different group of people profoundly said no thank you for the very same reasons of the first committee. I have not done letters to any entity or any submitter of grant application because they were still in the draft process in my mind. So I've not alerted anyone that needs to or would want to come visit with you. I assume that comes later during public hearing time. If you prefer I do something different, I'm happy to do so. But at this point, only the committees are aware of what the recommendation is at this point. Then drawing your attention with the social service, one agency did not reapply, El Centro. I know he was overwhelmed and just could not meet even 2 extensions. And then the other one that might catch you a little bit heartburn is the First Tee of Shawnee County. Formerly under Community Action and had always been successful as a Community Action grant request, it has just recently tried to break out on its own, which I think it should. It is a wonderful program, and I was kind of disappointed to see how the committee decided to treat it. But at the end of the day, it is not a basic need. Whether First Tee, survives or circles the drain will not keep somebody from having dinner tonight. And that's kind of how we boiled it down. So there's a lot of folks that are involved in First Tee and trying to make a good run at it. I know that they're partnering with Park and Rec to, because they've been out at Forbes working there with their child programs, and those programs are fabulous, and I've been on their committee before as part of Community Action Committee work that I do. So I'm not discounting the purpose or the legitimacy of this program or the fact that they're trying to go out on their own. It's time to break out from under Community Action and stand on their own. But we weren't able to support that with trying to come in at budget or below budget, and quite frankly, the committee was overwhelmed when they came in almost 20% under budget from this year's funding. Now, part of that's because some funders didn't make the deadline, and rather than think they had more money to spread around, they just kept sharpening their pencil. So they worked hard for the county and thinking about it was their checkbook they were spending. Let me stop there and see if there's questions at this point.
I know some of these took a pretty good jump.
Yes, some of them think, there's a philosophy out there with some grant writers that you ask for twice than what you really need. I have tried to dispel that over and over again through the last several years that I have managed this process for CRC, but, and we don't reward that. So that's just a delusion that they operate under. Betty, did you have something?
Some of them, and on both lists, social services and the aging, some of them, we have a hard time getting their financials.
Ooh.
We require a quarterly report.
Mm-hmm.
Like to get their third quarter payment, we have to receive their first quarter.
Absolutely.
And sometimes at the end of the year, we're knocking and knocking and knocking, just to get that so we can pay them. And I don't know if that needs to be part of your evaluation process, if we need to let you know that.
It sure can be, but let me step up first and do an education process with these, because it's not the people I see every month at these meetings, it's their finance people.
Yeah.
But let me circle back and do some training and education on what needs to happen here.
Well, and we can, let you know too, who Cheryl, as you know, just retired. And
Yes.
I'm not really familiar enough with the different players to know which ones Cassie Dewar is going into that position or has gone into that position.
What's the name again?
Cassie Dewar, she's
Oh,
also in our office.
Okay,
Moved
so I
up
think
to
I was,
that.
was I dealing with someone named Michelle, maybe? Yeah.
Michelle is in there too, she's more on the purchasing side.
Got it.
But we were all filling in. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So we can kind of let you know which players, but those that, some of them, we end up spending a lot of time trying to give them money.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to chase them. I will correct that. And at the end of the day, if I'm back here this time next year and it's still a problem, then we may have to go the direction of the city there's a certain point, A and B, when they, time window when they apply, and if they don't, so sad.
Yeah.
So that's a little tough on the city's part, but I can understand why they got there. So let me focus on some
We have
training.
not done that yet, but,
Yeah,
you know, and even this time, when we were sending them out this time, with the COVID and everything like that, I said, you know, as long as we had what we needed last quarter, I am not gonna penalize them this time, just because of the COVID, but, you know, come next time, we'll be looking at that again.
you bet, as you should. Your people shouldn't have to chase them. So let me do some training first, because it's
And we
not
can
something
kinda
we
let you
focus
know
on.
which ones are,
Perfect. That way I don't have to preach to the choir.
yeah.
Because I would imagine some people need that, they want to make that money, they want it in right away, but.
And
When you're-
you know, there's always those that are right on time.
True, and I would suspect the smaller shops that are wearing so many hats are probably your worst offenders. So, what else can I explain further for you all, or help? Well, nothing, I need help from you. We have a bit of an issue because of COVID. Part of what the Advocacy Council on Aging does, besides meet every month, and we've been doing that through Zoom, and so we're still getting the reports of what's going on with the agencies. And of course, the smaller senior centers did close for a while. A couple of them have opened up easy and part-time and trying to figure out their numbers and being very careful because their constituents or, you know, their clients are the biggest target group, you know, in having a problem if they were to get the virus. So they've been very skittish about trying to really get back going full-time, which is unfortunate. Because part of the problem, or for us, one of the mandates that we do, CRC manages and makes sure happen, is that every agency that takes county money has a site visit on site. And there is a questionnaire that both the executive director or a board member does, and then the site person, which is generally a voting member of the council, does the site visit and works through the paperwork with the executive director. They go while they're open, they view what they're doing, see how they're using the money, talk to some of the clients that are there in person to just get a feel that while they come every month and tell us what they're doing, we want to go see. And that's part of what our job is to do. And when a council member can't do it, CRC steps in and does it. And so I do several of these through the year, which is no big toot. It gets done. But my problem is, most of my voting members on the council are that big target group as well. And they're concerned about getting out there in a mix of people that they don't know, and they've been so careful for so long, and our numbers can, because we sort of shoved this off to the second half of the year. But our numbers, as you know, aren't looking any better. And so I'm hesitant to say this must happen. But I'm not sure I can get the questionnaire filled out. And I personally have a good sense of what's happening out there, because they're talking to me, they're keeping me informed, or they're running issues or questions by me for guidance to try and find getting back on the rails, if you will, and running their programs. And I'm wondering if this is the year where maybe that is not a hard and fast situation. On the bigger opportunities like JAAA, Meals on Wheels, and some of those that are still continue to function no matter what, even if a voting council member doesn't feel comfortable, I'll go do them, and we get them done. But there's a half a dozen or so smaller ones that are only functioning here and there. I'm not sure it's worth the effort, so I'm asking for direction from you three. What would you like to do? Yes, Betty?
What does the contract say? Does it require it, or is it at discretion, or?
It's really just kind of, these are the things we're looking for the council, you know, to monitor and be aware of. And so then through that process, the council itself has created sort of provisional things to do, but it was really self-imposed. I think it's a good thing, and I don't want to abandon it, but I'm not sure that I need to enforce it beyond normal sense here. But I want to know what you think.
I don't know. I'm new to all this, guys.
Well, let me kind of throw something out there. One of the things that we changed, oh gosh, it's been several years ago now. It used to be that everyone that received money from the county was required to have an audit.
Yes.
And we, and so they would spend a lot of money, and proportionately, it was too much money, and so we changed that with my permission, they could have a review done.
Yep.
It's still, some independent people come in and look at their books, and so you get that independence, but it's a lot less expensive, and I felt like in these small situations that just don't have very much money flowing through them anyway, it was certainly sufficient. So I think sometimes you gotta look at common sense
Yeah.
approaches, and that to me was kind of a common sense approach.
On your comment, Betty, I can give you a very hard example of that specifically, because we've encouraged them to go to reviews, which is about 1,800, maybe 2,000, and it's tied with your 990, and you generally have a CPA do that. One of the smaller agencies continues to do a full-blown audit. Their board doesn't get it for whatever reason. They paid $10,000 in 2019 for that audit. The committee, it was a demerit to the committee as far as they were concerned. If they were going to spend $10,000 on an audit when they should have been putting it towards their senior programming, they cut their programming for specific that reason. And they said to me, when you do that letter, you please outline why we did this, because they must stop spending county money in that way when it's not required. I thought, okay. They got tough. So it'd be my suggestion that if you all are comfortable, I'm going to do this on a case-by-case basis, see how the rest of the year shakes out. If things don't look as difficult in October, November, December, you can get one of those site visits done in about 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I will, if the voting members, because they're primarily seniors, are not comfortable, I will do those site visits. And we'll try to get as many done as we can. If they're not open, there's just not much I can do about that. Which brings me to my next and last question. What do you want to do? I mean, yeah, they've got salaries and rent and things that they're doing, but if they're not really doing their programming for a long period, and I'm going to go 90 days for a long period, how do you feel about the quarterly requests or the quarterly expense reimbursement that they're putting in? The county does not specifically indicate how the grant monies are to be used, and which I can tell you all agencies love that the county doesn't make it all about programming, because they often will use this for back office support, for some salary, for some benefit, for some utility rent and so on. Because a lot of the smaller things they go after are very insistent, programming only. None of the other stuff that's necessary to make the programming happen. We're in weird times right now, I know we are.
Well, I think our requirement is just that they send us a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Right.
I mean, they can send us a statement that shows no expenses,
Right.
if that's what they had. I don't think we changed the requirement of
No.
them sending something in. Now, if it's no expenses, then they send that in.
Well, they'll have, I mean, they're still going to pay rent, they're still going to pay benefits, they're still going to pay salary, even though they're a small shop, they're still going to have some of those things, which I think when, historically, you take a look, that's where a lot of the county money goes to in support of the programming that they do. And I just want to get you guys on notice that, it's kind of a slippery slope right now for these agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Their heart is where it needs to be, but they're also trying to protect themselves and their clients and their staff. So every day they're reevaluating what to do, and their boards are, pulling their hair out trying to decide, how do we go forward? So may I suggest that I leave it with, I will work with Betty. If something, it doesn't look right, we're going to talk about it, and then we may end up coming back to you, I don't know. I'm not saying that people don't deserve the funding the agencies don't deserve the funding that they were approved. And most of them have been closed for a little bit, but then they open right away, even if part-time, just they want their seniors back out and moving, and they want to see them and make sure they're healthy. So they're doing things for the right reasons. But if somebody like Catholic Charities, we have this issue, then Betty's going to be the first to know beyond me, and then we're going to sort out how we deal with it.
I would agree with that.
Great. I just want you guys on notice because nothing worth than being caught flat-footed out there among the voting folks with these weird questions.
Right.
All right, thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you very much. Oh, one last thing. In point, if you guys caught this yesterday, this little this farmer group, local farmer group, this is one of our new startup not-for-profits that I am working with right now to put together into a not-for-profit agency in Kansas, and they will work under our 501c3. So we probably have about 20 right now. Everybody's got a thought process that they want to get out there and save the world with.